Okay, question 3. Social advocacy and activism. Why are advocacy and activism such an essential part of the field? Not only being a social worker, but being a person that wants social change and social justice. To me, this is the most important. You can have all the public policies, to try to have all the public policies, but this is where it starts. This is the grassroots efforts that shapes the systems, the big mainframe systems where the policies will come from. People will still say it has nothing to do with one's color of their skin. They'll say that it has to do with class and culture, more than culture, and by culture they mean usually black and brown people. And I'm going to say that it starts with black and brown people, and we like to, because it makes us feel better, I think, to say that it doesn't really have to do with that. We're all equal. And I read a book years ago that made me change, really made me to change the way I looked at it, and it was called White Like Me, and by Tim Wise. And thousands of people will show up when he's talking about the obvious. If Tim Wise was black, 2 people would show up, or they would probably picket it. But it even shows there the institutional racism that we have in our country and white privilege. So to get back to the question of why activism is so important, with white privilege it carries a huge cost. And that huge cost is not seeing or not understanding what that means to have the power base. And it's very easy to miss the subtleties. And it's also easy as a white person that tries to care and tries to change the system. It will rain every day. We will get struck down and we will make mistakes because we don't live in that world. And when we do make the mistakes, we have to dust ourselves off and get up and understand that we don't know that world. We're only trying to make that world better and not to let that stop us. That's the most important key of activism. And again, it's important. I'm trying to explain why it's so hard to get involved in it, right? Because people will attack you, especially when you're trying to help somebody of a different race who will say that you feel guilty, that it's liberalism, guilt, or whatever reason that they use. And then you will make a mistake, and it'll kind of self-fulfill. It'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I like to read a quote, and this really helped me understand activism, and it's by James Baldwin, and it's The Crusade of Indignation, The Nation, July 7th, 1956. Indignation and goodwill are not enough to make the world better. Clarity is needed, as well as charity, however difficult this may be to imagine, much less sustain toward the other side. Perhaps the worst thing that can be said about social indignation is that it so frequently leads to the death of personal humility. Once that has happened, one has ceased to live in that world of men which one is striving so mightily to make over. One has entered into a dialogue with that terrifying deity, sometimes called history, previously and perhaps again to be referred to as God, to which no sacrifice and human suffering is too great. To me, that's the saying that once you step into that world of activism, that you, as I said before, you're going to start running into major obstacles and major pushbacks and insults. And sometimes people know that they're doing it, but most of the time I think it's subconscious. That what the hell, these black people don't need any help. What are you trying to be? Are you a black person lover? Or why are you trying to help out these minorities all the time? All they need to do is pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And activism for me, and I'll talk about some of the things I try to do in some of the other questions, but it started, the day it started for me, and when I understood the difference, And it was an aha moment for me, and it's snap of a finger. I went to an all-white grade school, and then my middle school was mixed. And I didn't blossom into a college candidate till later on in school. I was a below average student. And I wasn't that smart, didn't do well, had attention deficit disorder, and just was a overall poor student. But something magical happened. I was marched down with the other white kids for the college prep courses, while the kids that I became friends with that were black stayed back, that were smarter than me, because I would ask them the questions to help me on the test, sometimes cheating. Hey, what's the question, or what's the answer to that test question? And they knew it. But they stayed back to beat meat cutters and electricians, and I was going to the college courses. And even at that little age, that young age, being a little kid, I knew what was happening. We were starting to self-segregate. The system was taking me to be a college kid and leaving the black kids behind. And this was in the 70s, so I think it was a little more brutal. Maybe it is still today, I don't know. But it was just clear to me. And I could remember a good friend of mine saying that he just doesn't talk to white people anymore. And I was kind of taken aback. And why is that? And he says, I don't see white kids anymore. I don't see my white buddies. So it started in school, that whole segregation. And I fought that. Then I was asking questions, raising my hand and asking Mr. Kozel, why am I going to